Hello and happy harvest moon. As of today, while this is being recorded, it is the harvest moon. So we are reading some books and we are playing some games and doing some activities to learn all about it and celebrate. In fact, we have a family garden that we are going to go pick from today. So whether you do this exactly on the harvest moon or you just discuss it in the coming weeks, these are some resources that you can use. Some things that I'm not going to include in my video that we have done to celebrate harvest is we have created a corn dolly, and that's going to be mentioned in one of the books that I read, and I'm going to read the books in full in the video so that you can use them. We are also making masks, and we're doing some different cultural studies. Because we homeschool, we are going to pick out some different harvest recipes that we can make. So apple cider and pongal from India. There's also a recipe, I don't know how to pronounce it and I don't remember the name of it, but it's from Korea. So we're going to choose some different cultural things from around the world to celebrate some harvest here. So I'm going to read in full, as mentioned, 3 books, and then I have a short segment on an activity and a game. So I'm going to also mention in the timestamps when you can go to each one. So you can jump to each book and you can jump to the game and activity. I will mention that especially for the We Gather Together book, that depending on your background, you may not agree with some of the time frames. So for instance, it has, 10,000 years ago or 300,000 years ago. And if that doesn't suit you, it just is a great time to sit down and talk about it. Or it also talks about different cultures, and you may not be Jewish or you may not be Hindu. So it's just a great time to talk about, if you're a family, what you do believe, and if you are a classroom teacher, you can talk about different beliefs as a whole from the different students within your classroom. And so I just wanted to give that preface to reading the books. So I hope that these resources work really well for you, whether homeschool, librarian, in a traditional classroom, or just a parent trying to engage your children. So let's get started. Gather together, celebrating the harvest season. During early autumn in the northern part of the earth, chipmunks pack their cheeks full of seeds to store in underground burrows. Red fox pups hunt for rodents and fruit to eat, then bury leftovers to dig up when food is scarce. Beavers store twigs and sticks underwater to chew when ice covers their pond. As the sun appears lower in the southern sky each day, the sun rises later each morning and sets earlier each evening. Days grow shorter, nights cooler, and the growing season ends. Time to prepare for winter. Black bears gobble honey, grubs, fruits, and roots, building layers of fat for the cold days ahead. People pick purple grapes, yellow squash, orange pumpkins, and crisp red apples. They husk corn, gather nuts, rake cranberries, and enjoy the harvest season. But today, there's little need for them to stockpile food for winter as the animals do. Ships, trucks, and cargo planes transport it from parts of the world where fruits and vegetables are still growing. When it's winter in the northern hemisphere, food is brought from the southern hemisphere where it's still summer. So here is the cycle of the earth around the sun for the summer, the fall or autumnal equinox, fall, winter solstice, winter, spring equinox. Different seasons are caused by the tilt of the earth as it moves around the sun. When the northern part of the earth tilts towards the sun, the north gets a lot of sunshine, and it's summer there. When the northern part of the earth tilts away from the sun, the north gets less sunshine, and it's winter. Between summer and winter, around September 21st, the sun crosses the equator and shines equally on both the northern and the southern parts of the earth. On that day, the northern part of the world, summer ends and autumn begins. Day and night have equal hours all over the world. For many, autumnal equinox signals a time to harvest crops. Each crop has its own growing season. Most seedlings sprout with cool spring rain and thrive under warm summer sun. Sunshine helps a plant's leaves make the food that is necessary for the plant to grow. When autumn arrives, days are cooler. Plants no longer make the food that they need, and the growing season ends. Time to gather the crops. Fruits and vegetables that ripen by autumn must be harvested before winter's freezing, because weather destroys them. 300,000 years ago, no one knew how to plant seeds to produce bountiful harvests. Cave dwellers picked berries, collected nuts, dug roots, and gathered wild plants. Winters were hard for them. They had to live on what they gathered and stored in the fall. About 10,000 years ago, where Syria and Turkey are today, tribes learned to grow wheat and barley from seeds. How exciting it must have been to plant one seed and produce a stalk with many. 8,000 years ago in Egypt, people discovered the warm climate was perfect for farming. The Nile River provided water, and once each year, its floodwaters deposited rich, black, fertile soil on both sides. Plants grew in abundance. Gradually, farming spread to Asia. About 5,000 years ago, people grew food in crescent-shaped area where Iraq is now. The Tigris River and small streams that fed turned valleys into fertile crescents of rich farmlands. Each autumn, in many lands, men and women and children worked all day and even at night under the light of a bright harvest moon. They cut rice, threshed wheat, and gathered bundles of barley. A good harvest meant plenty of food to eat in the fall, and more to store for days when food was scarce. Time to rejoice and have fun after hard, back-breaking work. Over the centuries, people have celebrated plentiful harvests and passed down traditions at different times, in different places, in different ways. All over the world, harvest celebrations from the past are still being carried on today. Jewish families have gathered together at harvest time for over 3,000 years to celebrate Sukkot. During the 8-day festival of Thanksgiving, they wave palm, myrtle, and willow branches and then point them in all different directions to show that God is everywhere. Some Jews build a hut called a sukkah, like the ones farmers once stayed in, to be near their crops during a busy harvest. They decorate the huts with fruits and vegetables and invite friends and family to share food and friendship. People in southern India have celebrated Pongal, a 4-day rice festival, for over 2,000 years. On the first day, they decorate their front doors with rice flower designs and give thanks to the rain gods. On the second day, they cook Pongal, a sweet rice pudding, and offer some to the sun god. On the third day, they honor their cattle to thank them for pulling the plows. The fourth day, families and friends gather on riverbanks to dance and enjoy a bountiful feast, including, of course, freshly harvested rice. The people of Japan have had rice festivals for years, for about 2,000 years. In spring, girls dressed in kimonos plant rice while musicians play bells, drums, and flutes. In summer, they hold a lantern festival to express their joy as the rice ripens. When fall comes, they celebrate the rice harvest with parades and a dragon dance. During their moon viewing ceremony, people sing while watching shadows on the full moon. Many think that the shadows show a rabbit making rice cakes. For over 700 years, Nigerians have held a fall festival to give thanks for yams, the first crop harvested. On the night before the festivities begin, the old wrinkled yams are thrown out. The next day, the new yams are offered to the gods and ancestors in appreciation of the successful harvest. Dancers wear raffia skirts and masks that portray turtles, lizards, trees, and the sun or moon to celebrate a cycle of nature. Hundreds of years ago, the English believed that the spirit of their wheat lived in the last bundle they cut. In each field, they twisted it into the shape of a doll. Since they called the wheat corn, these dolls were named corn dollies. They were hung in barns or churches during the winter and plowed back into the earth in the spring to ensure a good harvest in autumn. People still make corn dollies just for fun. Pilgrims from England landed in America in fall of 1620, too late to plant crops. That winter, many died from hunger and sickness. When spring came, the surviving pilgrims sowed wheat seeds. A Native American tribe called the Wampanoags showed them how to plant maize or corn. The following autumn, the harvest was fruitful. The Pilgrims planned a celebration to share this blessing. Wampanoag men hunted and killed 5 deer to bring to the feast, and the Pilgrims stayed busy too. Men brought ducks, geese, turkeys, fish, and oysters. Women prepared cornbread and cranberries, while children turned meat on spits over an open fire. Games and feasting lasted 3 days. Bountiful harvests have been celebrated since the earliest times. People all over the world celebrate a fruitful year of farming with fun feasts and festivals. They enjoy corn, rice, yams, apples, pumpkins, cranberries, and other fruits and vegetables of the harvest season. Autumn, with its brilliant colors and delicious gifts of nature, offers friends and families a time to gather and to give thanks for their blessings. An equinox occurs when the center of the sun appears directly over the equator and shines equally on both the northern and southern parts of the earth. Day and night are equal all over the world. Equinox means equal night. On that day, everywhere on earth, there are 12 hours of light and 12 hours of dark. If you would like to pause and read the rest of these facts, you may. I'm going to leave that to you if you would like to learn. There are a few different things that can be done from the book and some festivals where you can make your own mask, so you can research festivals. The Anthems, Harvest Moon, Words and Pictures by Anne Hunter. Possum awoke one autumn evening. Shining through the grass was the biggest, brightest, yellowest moon. "Oh," said Possum, "the harvest moon. What a perfect night for a party." One last dance in the moonlight before the long winter. A harvest soiree. Possum hung the grass with lanterns and berries, and he hurried to invite his guests. "Mice, mice," Possum cried at the meadow's edge. "Come to my harvest moon party." "We must gather seeds for the winter," said the mice. "We are too busy to come to your party." Next, Possum peered into a pile of leaves. "Come out, crickets, hop along to my party under the bright harvest moon." "We are tired from singing all summer," said the crickets. "The night air is too cold now, and this leaf pile is so snug." Down by the creek, Possum found a raccoon catching fish. "Dry your hands, old raccoon, and come to the last hurrah of the year." "Oh, I would," growled Raccoon. "But I must be good and fat for the long winter. So much to eat in so little time." Possum followed the creek to the pond. "Frogs, frogs," Possum shouted. "Come sing and dance under the great, great moon. Come to my harvest soiree." "Too late, too late, too late," chorused the frogs. "It's time for us to go underground for the winter." Possum turned sadly toward home. He looked up at the twinkling sky. "Oh, fireflies, could you come to my party?" The fireflies twinkled silently back at him. How could they work on such a beautiful night? Possum asked himself. How could they think of sleep in such moonlight? He put on his hat and sat alone, looking up at the harvest moon. The great harvest moon rose higher. It shone down through the grass and under the leaves. It made every tired and busy creature pause. It was a moon that made them dream of dancing, of eating and singing. Toes twitched and voices hummed. How could they possibly miss Possum's harvest soiree? Raccoon roosted his crony rabbit. The crickets invited their cousins, the katydids. The mice brought the moles, and the peepers hopped after the frogs. They hurried and scurried while the night was still young, and Possum could hear squeaking and scampering from all directions. And the guests arrived! They brought seeds and berries, fiddles and songs. All together they gazed up at the face of the great harvest moon. Rabbit and Raccoon settled in down by the food. They nibbled and nodded. Never in all of our years, they agreed, has the harvest moon been so bright. No, never. The mice danced until the crickets played every jig twice, and the frogs grew hoarse from singing. The fireflies' lights flickered and dimmed. A cool breeze ruffled over the tired creatures as the moon sank low. It was time to go home, home to the dens and nests, holes and burrows, time for the winter's long sleep. Good night, squeaked the mice. Great party, chirped the crickets. Until next spring, growled Old Raccoon. Farewell, piped the frogs. See you next year, said Possum. He waved until every last guest was gone. Possum curled up in his own snug home. He looked out to see the last light of the great moon peeking through the grass. Good night, yawned Possum. Good night. Today is the harvest. All year we have worked so hard. Mom and I planted seeds in our garden, and we pulled weeds so that the sun could reach it. We fed it water when it was dry. We put fertilizer on the soil when it was hungry. So we've got some apples and carrots and cabbage and flowers. All year, our garden has worked so hard. It put down strong roots so plants could grow. It flowered and created fruit upon trees. Vegetables and sweet-smelling herbs grew from our seeds. Now, the fruits and vegetables we harvest today will feed us later when we are hungry. I pick apples from the trees and dig carrots from the soil. I pluck herbs like sweet basil and dill, and flowers like black-eyed Susan and sunflowers. But of all the garden's gifts, the pumpkins are my favorite, so smooth and orange upon the vine. We have a bounty of food and flowers. I feel thankful to the earth for its work, the harvest. There's so much more food than we could eat at one meal, but there are ways we can store our harvest for later. Mom and I hang the flowers and herbs up to dry. We bake pies and bread, and we cook some of the fruit to store in jars. That night, there is a huge moon, as round and rusty as a pumpkin. Mom tells me that it's called the harvest moon. I know why. We have harvested our garden. All year we have worked so hard, and all year our garden has worked so hard, and now it's time to rest. Okay, so our harvest activity is to write a haiku poem. So a haiku is 3 lines. The first line is 5 syllables. The second line is 7. The third line is 5. So you can do this on your own without actually necessarily playing a game, but it's also a great way to talk about haikus and not just the harvest moon, but it's just a fun activity. So the game is called Haikcubes, and what's nice about this is you have the different cubes that you can use to help you think of different words. So for instance, with a harvest moon, like window would be a really good cube that maybe you didn't think of, or following for a 3-syllable word. There are lots of different words on each cube. You can roll them, and there's a blank side on, I think, all of them. And that can be a word that you choose on your own. So you can roll them and you can make your own haikus. I will share with you 2 haikus that we wrote. So mine is, hello, harvest moon, you shine bright in the fall sky to pick our bounty. And then my daughter wrote, Hi there, harvest moon. You make light for all to see, to pick from fruit trees. So that's the activity in the game. And I hope that you enjoyed this and that you can enjoy your harvest moon in this lesson. So if you have any questions, need resources, or other ideas, don't hesitate to send me an email at connect@boardgamesforlearning.com. And until next time, I'll talk to you later.